I was born under a blood moon, and before I could speak, the world already feared me.
Born under the blood moon, cursed by men, claimed by the wild.
My mother, her face blurred by tears, trembling hands clutching me tightly one last time. She laid me gently by a quiet stream, the moonlight dancing on the water beside me. Not because she didn't love me. No, her heart broke with every step she took away. But the villagers, they whispered, pointed, feared the mark on my shoulder. They made her believe I was cursed, a child of ruin, a bad omen. And so, under the weight of their fear, she let me go. I was left to the wild, before I ever had a name. She leaned down, her hands shaking, her breath catching in her throat. She kissed me once, soft, desperate, like she was trying to press all her love into that single moment. Then she whispered something only the trees heard. Her voice was broken, trembling, but I didn't understand the words. And before I could cry, before I could reach for her, she turned and vanished into the shadows of the forest. No goodbye, no turning back. I never saw her again. They called it a mark of darkness, a spiral etched into the skin of my shoulder, glowing faintly under moonlight. The village elders gathered around me, their faces filled with fear, not wisdom. They said it was a sign, a curse that would bring ruin to their land. Whispers turned into warnings, warnings turned into commands. My mother pleaded, cried, but it didn't matter. They made her believe that I would destroy everything. So they forced her to leave me behind. A newborn child alone in a world that feared him before he ever took his first step. Alone. I cried. My voice was small, helpless, swallowed by the towering trees. I remember the coldness of the river mist brushing against my skin like ghostly fingers. The earth was damp beneath me. The sky was wide and empty, and all around me, silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that listens, the kind that judges. The forest didn't move, it didn't speak, but somehow I knew it was watching me, a stranger, an orphan, left in the cradle of something ancient and wild.
Then he appeared, Muntu, a giant silver black, taller than any man.
He could have ended it right there. A giant silverback towering above me, strong enough to crush me with a single breath. The jungle would have accepted it. One less cursed child. But he didn't kill me. He didn't walk away. He just stood there, silent, still. Then he looked into my eyes. Not like a beast looking at prey, but like a father seeing something he didn't expect. And in that moment, he chose me, against the laws of the wild, against the fear in his own heart. He made me his. That was the day I became jungle. Not man, not monster. Something in between. I was raised by beasts with wiser eyes than any elder. Cradled in nests woven from vines, taught to climb before I could stand. I learned the language of silence, where every rustle, every breath meant something. My lullabies were the cries of distant birds, the hum of night insects, the thunder of waterfalls. The wild became my home, and I became its son, not by blood, but by bond. I grew up chasing the wind through vines, swinging from tree to tree, barefoot and wild, racing the birds above me. The jungle was my playground, my classroom, my home. I tasted wild berries straight from the bush, my hands always stained with color, my lips sticky with juice. I laughed with gorilla cubs like they were my brothers. We wrestled in the mud, leapt through branches, howled at the rain. There were no mirrors, but I knew who I was. Not a lost boy, not a curse, just Zaru, child of sky and soil. I didn't know where I came from, who my people were, what my name even meant. But in those days, I didn't care. The jungle didn't ask questions. It didn't need answers. It accepted me, muddy feet, wild hair, and all. I was happy. I was wild. I was alive in ways the outside world could never understand. Every sunrise was a new adventure. Every sound was a secret. And I thought, maybe this is all I'll ever need. Me, the trees, and the wind. I swung with monkeys through towering trees, laughing, flipping, barely holding on as the wind kissed my face. I slept in nests made of leaves and vines, curled beside gorilla cubs beneath the stars. I raced leopards through jungle rivers, splashing through the water with nothing but my breath and my courage. The jungle wasn't just my home. It was my classroom, my playground, my entire world. Every rock had a lesson, every bird a song. I didn't need walls or teachers. I had the wild, and the wild had me. Muntu. He was more than a father. He was my shadow in the trees, and my shield in the storm. He didn't speak in words, but in strength, in silence, in presence. When he moved, the jungle parted. When he beat his chest, the earth didn't just hear it, it listened. He was wisdom carved in muscle, kindness hidden in power. No one dared challenge him, but with me, he was gentle, patient. He taught me without teaching, and when I stood beside him, I felt like nothing could ever hurt me. He taught me silence, how to listen to the wind, the trees, and the space between heartbeats. He taught me patience, to wait, to watch, to move only when the moment was right. And he taught me power, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that never needs to. But the others, they stared, not with curiosity, but with suspicion. I felt their eyes on me every time I climbed too high, ran too fast, laughed too loud. I was different, and they knew it. Not all of them believed I belonged. "You are not gorilla," one of the elders hissed, his voice sharp like stone breaking. "You are man, and man brings ruin." The words cut deeper than any claw. I wasn't just a stranger. I was a warning, a threat wrapped in a boy's skin. I didn't care, not yet. Their words slid off me like rain on leaves. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance, because the jungle still held me in its arms. The rivers still laughed with me. The birds still sang when I passed. The trees still whispered my name in the wind. Out there, in the wild, I wasn't a mistake or a threat. I was a part of something older, something sacred, and that was enough for me, for a while. At night, I'd lie on a bed of leaves and stare at the stars. Tiny lights, scattered across the sky like forgotten thoughts. I wondered what they meant, who they belonged to. Were they watching me, guiding me? So many stories seemed to be hiding in that sky, waiting to be told. And I had so many questions. Questions I didn't know how to ask. Questions no gorilla could answer. In those moments, I felt small, but somehow not alone. Then came the day I wandered too far. It started like any other, with laughter in my chest and sunlight on my skin. But then I saw it, a frog, bright blue and glowing, with golden eyes that shimmered like fireflies. It didn't hop like the others. It led, and I followed, through the vines, past the trees I knew, deeper into the jungle than I'd ever gone. I didn't think, I didn't fear. I was chasing magic, and I didn't even know it. The vines pulled at me like they knew where I was meant to go. They led me deeper, step by step, into a part of the jungle I'd never seen before. A hollow drenched in shadow and silence. The air grew thick, the light dimmed, and then I saw them. They were waiting. Snakes, dozens of them, thick, coiled, watching, their tongues flicking the air like they could taste my fear. Their eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, I wasn't the jungle's child. I was its prey. I froze. My legs wouldn't move. My breath caught in my throat like a stone. They slithered toward me, slow, deliberate, all fangs and hunger. Their scales shimmered in the low light, coiling tighter with every inch. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought the jungle could hear it. I wasn't a warrior. I wasn't a spirit. I was just a child, alone, afraid. So I did what any child would do. I screamed, and the earth swallowed them. I ran, barefoot, breathless, vines whipping past me, heart still racing. I didn't stop until I found him. Muntu. I told him everything. The snakes, the scream, the way the ground had swallowed them whole. I expected disbelief, maybe even fear, but he didn't laugh. He didn't question. He just knelt beside me, his massive hand resting gently on my shoulder. His eyes met mine, searching, steady, and in them, I saw something I didn't expect: pride and fear. That was the forest, he said, listening, testing, awakening. His voice was low, almost like he was afraid to say more. I stared up at him, confused. What did it mean? The forest listening? How could trees test me? What had I awakened? But Muntu didn't explain. He just looked at the place where the ground had opened and closed, like he had seen this before, like he had been waiting for it. That night, the jungle felt different, quieter, heavier. The wind barely moved. The stars burned brighter. I curled against Muntu's chest as he held me, his heartbeat slow and steady, a rhythm I had always trusted. And just as my eyes began to close, I heard it. Not a sound exactly, not in my ears. It was a whisper in my bones, a presence more than a voice. It filled my chest like a second breath, ancient, steady, deeper than any river, older than the sun, and it said, "Come, child of soil, come to where water remembers light." I sat up, breath caught in my throat. My hands were shaking. I looked at the trees, the shadows, the stars, but the jungle had gone still again. When the morning came, I told Muntu everything, every word, every feeling. He said nothing. He didn't question me, didn't hesitate. He just rose, slowly like a mountain waking, and looked toward the east. Then he said the words that would change everything. "It is time." We walked for days, through parts of the jungle even the birds refused to sing in, past trees that bled sap like tears, and stone idols so old they seemed to blink when the moonlight touched them. Muntu said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence between us carried meaning, heavy, ancient. My legs ached, my spirit trembled. But then we arrived, a clearing bathed in silver mist, water rising from stone like breath. That was the place. Nyoka's heart. Nyoka's heart. That's what Muntu called it. A place older than language. A sacred waterfall, hidden where no map dares speak, where even the wind moves quietly. It didn't roar like the others. It breathed, gentle, slow, like the lungs of something ancient and alive. Mist floated through the air like memory. The water shimmered, but never crashed. Standing there, I felt like I was standing inside a secret the earth had never told anyone. Mist floated around me like spirits, soft, weightless, watching. Every droplet in the air carried a whisper, like echoes from a time before time. The water shimmered, and not like sunlight or fire, but like moonlight trapped in a dream. It moved without sound, glowing from within, as if it remembered stars I had never seen. I didn't know if I was standing on stone or floating in some forgotten place between worlds. But I knew one thing. This was not ordinary water. This was alive. Muntu stood beside me, silent, unmoving. The mist curled around his massive frame like smoke around a statue. Then he placed his hand on my shoulder, heavy, warm, steady. I looked up at him, searching for comfort, but his eyes weren't soft this time. They were distant, almost reverent. He didn't give me answers. He didn't give me courage. He just whispered, almost like a prayer. "This is where the jungle decides." Darkness swallowed me whole. I didn't scream. I didn't fight it. I let go. Let the river carry me, wherever it wanted, wherever it needed. My body drifted through silence, through shadow, through memory. I didn't know if I was sinking or floating, if I was alive or becoming something else. But I wasn't afraid, because deep down, I knew the jungle wasn't drowning me. It was transforming me. I don't know how long I was gone. Time didn't exist down there. Only feeling, only visions. I saw animals, their eyes burning like stars, staring, circling, speaking without words. A tree with a human face. Its bark was wrinkled like old skin, and it wept sap that shimmered like gold. And then, my mark, burning, glowing like fire etched in stone, a pulse that wasn't just mine anymore. The jungle had touched me, and it had left something behind. The water spoke, not with words and but rhythm, a beat I felt in my chest, a heartbeat, but not mine. 3 days passed, but to him time didn't matter. Muntu never left the edge of the water, not once. He stood there, like a statue carved from will alone. He didn't eat, he didn't drink, he didn't sleep, because I was still down there, and somewhere in his heart, he believed the jungle would give me back, or he was ready to wait until it didn't. And on the third day, the surface of the water broke like a breath finally exhaled. I rose, not swimming, not walking, just lifted. The mist parted around me as if it recognized something new. My body felt foreign and familiar, heavier than stone, lighter than air. My skin tingled, each droplet buzzing like sparks beneath my flesh. My veins felt alive with fire, pulsing with something I couldn't name. My eyes, once green, now burned with gold. They didn't just see the jungle, they saw through it. The mark on my shoulder pulsed, not just glowing, but breathing, like it had woken up too. I could hear everything, the worms under the soil, the clouds thinking above the trees, the memory in the wind. I was no longer just a boy. I wasn't just human. I had become something more. The jungle didn't reject me. It claimed me. Lean or closer, not with suspicion, but with reverence. Their leaves brushed my shoulders like a greeting. The air, it shifted too. It carried my scent, my spirit, and bent around me like a cloak. For the first time, I wasn't just living in the jungle. I was part of it. The vines knew my heartbeat. The soil whispered my name. The jungle had accepted me. And I accepted it back. Muntu stood before me, silent, still. Then slowly he bowed. Not as a father proud of his son, but as a warrior honoring something greater. His head lowered, his massive fist resting on the earth, a gesture of respect, of surrender. In that moment, I felt the weight of who I had become. Not just a boy raised by peace, but something more. Muntu didn't need to speak. That bow said it all. I was no longer just his child. I was his king. He said nothing at first, just looked at me, eyes heavy with pride, and something deeper. Then from the folds of his fur, he brought out a stone. It wasn't just any stone. It pulsed faintly with warmth, wrapped in vines that still smelled of river and root. He placed it in my hand, gently, deliberately. This, he finally said, his voice like thunder softened by time, is your beginning. I didn't understand then, but my soul did. That was when my training began. Not the kind that breaks bones or builds muscle. I already had that. No, this was different. Muntu didn't teach me to fight. He taught me when not to. How to breathe before I strike. How to listen before I speak. How to become still enough for the wind to trust me. It wasn't strength I needed. It was control. And in that control, I found power. I learned balance not on solid ground, but on branches thinner than a finger. I danced with gravity, high above the forest floor, where a single breath could mean the difference between flight and fall. I stood as still as rivers at dawn. So still, even the birds forgot I was there. And when I moved like thunder. No warning, no mercy. The jungle didn't just sharpen my body, it carved my spirit. Muntu taught me silence, not just with my mouth, but with my soul. He said, noise draws prey, Silence controls it. So I learned to move without sound, to breathe with the wind, to listen to the whispers the world forgot. A wild thing that makes no sound, he told me once, rules all sound. In silence, I found presence. In stillness, I became unseen. And when the time came to be heard, the jungle listened. I studied their voices, every trill, every growl, every rhythm. I mimicked birds so perfectly, they answered back in song. I echoed monkey calls across the canopy and watched entire tribes swing toward my signal. I crouched in the shadows, called out like a wolf, and the pack came running. They didn't see a boy. They saw one of their own. The jungle had 1,000 voices, and one by one, I made them mine. And then it happened. Not with warning, not with fear, just a knowing. That night, under a sky lit by 100 restless stars, I felt something stir inside me. My body bent, reshaped not in pain, but in purpose. My breath deepened. My heartbeat slowed. My hands became paused. My eyes gleamed with new sight. I didn't fight it. I became it. A jungle cat, silent, sleek, powerful. And for the first time, I hunted the night. I ran not like a boy, but like something born from the wind. Through the trees, on 4 feet, every muscle alive with purpose. My eyes narrowed, catching every flicker of light, every twitch in the leaves. My heartbeat pounded in rhythm with the jungle drums, not from fear, but from freedom. The wind wrapped around me. The earth flew beneath me. I was no longer chasing the wild. I was the wild. Days later, I found them the wolves. Silent shadows in the brush. Golden eyes that watched without judgment. I didn't approach. I became one of them. I moved like they moved. I listened like they listened. And one night, as the sky turned deep purple and the stars blinked awake, we howled. Not in sorrow, not in hunger, but in unity. They circled me, nuzzled me. And in that moment, they called me brother. Birds perched on my shoulders like I was part of the sky. They didn't fear me, they knew me. When I whispered, the trees leaned in. Their leaves danced, their roots stirred, as if listening. And the wind, it didn't push, it followed. It wrapped around me like breath, like a secret shared only with the wild. I was no longer walking in the jungle. I was walking with it. But power, true power, is wild. It doesn't always listen. It stirs when you're angry. It moves when you're afraid. And once I lost control. One moment of rage and the jungle answered with fire. Vines burned, winds screamed, animals fled. And I stood in the middle of it, not a hero, not a monster, just a boy too young to carry what the wild had given. Angry, reckless, I screamed. Not at anyone, not at anything, just at the weight I didn't understand. And the jungle responded. The vines around me erupted into flame, like they had been waiting for the spark. The fire twisted and danced wild, untamed like my heart. I fell to my knees shaking. I wasn't proud. I wasn't powerful. I was afraid of what I was becoming. As the flames dimmed and smoke curled into the trees, I felt his presence behind me. He knew Muntu now calm as ever. He placed his massive palm on my back, not to restrain me, but to steady me. His voice was low, like thunder that comforts. You are not fire, he said, but you carry it. Not a warning, a truth. And in that moment, I understood that power wasn't just something you have, it's something you answer to. So I learned again, not how to fight, but how to feel. I sat with the wind, listened to its rhythm, matched my breath to its song. I reached into the fire, not with hands, but with calm. It danced when I led, and stilled when I let go. Flame became friend, not a weapon, not a warning, but a part of me, tamed not by strength, but by understanding. I fought beasts, not for glory, not for blood, but to understand. I faced claws, fangs, fury, and I listened to the way they moved, the rhythm of their muscle, the breath before a strike, the calm before a pounce. It wasn't battle, it was conversation. Every fight taught me something about instinct, about grace, about myself. Each night, beneath the whispering trees, I sat in silence, the stars my witness. I took stone to stone and carved. Not words, symbols. Shapes pulled from the way birds flew, the way rivers curled, the way beasts moved through shadow. The jungle didn't need language. It needed memory. So I gave it mine, etched into rock, left where only the wind and roots could find them. I wasn't just learning the wild, I was writing it back, but whispers began to rise again. Not from the wind, not from the trees, from the shadows, from behind watching eyes. The old tribe, the ones who never called me brother, they spoke in growls and glances. Too human, they said, too different. My strength frightened them. My silence unsettled them. And in their fear, I saw something dangerous. Not a storm of nature, but a storm of hearts turning cold. Baku, the tribe's fiercest, proud, heavy with tradition. Eyes like stone, voice like thunder. He never trusted me, never saw me as one of them. One day before the others, he stepped forward and bared his teeth. "You are no beast," he growled. "You are man, and man brings ruin." His words cut deeper than claws. "You are not one of us. You are a curse in skin and bone." And with that, a line was drawn in the dirt. Then came the ambush. No warning, no mercy. I was 18, stronger than ever, but still blind to betrayal. They struck from the trees, shadows with teeth and hate in their hearts. Not strangers, my own tribe. I heard Baku's growl before the first blow landed. "It ends now," he said. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a test of strength. It was a decision. Either I fall, or I become something more. It came at night, silent as shadows. 5 of them. Not beasts, not brothers, but warriors bred for one purpose: to end me. Their blades caught the moonlight, sharp and waiting. I knew them. Gorillas from the dark tribe. Eyes like the mountain cold, unmoving, merciless. They didn't roar. They didn't speak. They just closed in. And in that moment, the jungle held its breath. So did I. I fought with instinct, not skill. Claws, teeth, fire. Everything the jungle had given me I used, but they were trained, and I was still just surviving. Every strike I dodged, another came from behind. Every breath I took, they stole 2 more. And then I saw him, Baku, looming through the trees like thunder wrapped in muscle. His eyes didn't blink. He came for me, not as a rival, but as executioner. A stone struck the side of my head, hard, sudden. I stumbled, dizzy. Blood spilled into my eyes, painting the jungle red. Everything blurred, spinning, fading. I dropped to one knee. They closed in. And then the ground shook. A roar shattered the silence like thunder tearing the sky. Through the blur, I saw him, Muntu, charging, unstoppable. Not as a father, but as a storm. He took the blow meant for me. No hesitation, no fear. Just a roar and a shield of silver fur. The blade meant for my chest sank into his shoulder. Time slowed. His knees buckled. I screamed his name, but the jungle swallowed the sound. He fell not as a beast, but as a father. My protector. The only family I'd ever known. Lying still beneath the moonlight. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. I ran, not from fear, but from the storm boiling inside me. Because in that moment, I wasn't just a boy. I was rage, fire, something ancient and untamed waking inside my blood. If I stayed, I would become something terrible. I would burn everything, even those I loved. So I ran into the only place left, the forbidden dark, where no beast returns, where even the trees whisper warnings. I crossed the line. Not a path, but a feeling cold, sharp, alive. Into the forbidden dark zone. A place where light forgets to shine. Where even the bravest gorillas whisper prayers before turning back. The air was heavier there. The trees, older, twisted with secrets. Every step echoed with warnings. But I didn't turn around. Because whatever waited in that darkness was still safer than what I was becoming. It was not a jungle. It was a graveyard of trees. Their trunks blackened, their branches twisted like claws frozen in fear. No birds, no beasts, just silence, heavy and unnatural. The air didn't move, it clung to my skin like smoke. The ground was littered with bones and roots tangled like old regrets. Even my breath felt too loud, like I was trespassing on something sacred and broken. This was no jungle. This was a warning. It was not a jungle. It was a graveyard of trees. Their trunks blackened, their branches twisted like claws frozen in fear. No birds, no beasts, just silence, heavy and unnatural. The air didn't move, it clung to my skin like smoke. The ground was littered with bones and roots tangled like old regrets. Even my breath felt too loud, like I was trespassing on something sacred and broken. This was no jungle. This was a warning. Then I saw her. She didn't move like a beast. She flowed like mist under moonlight. Eyes like full moons glowing silver, unblinking, knowing. Fur darker than the night itself, like shadows soaked in rain and secrets. She stepped from the ruins of trees without a sound. And yet the forest seemed to breathe again with her presence. I didn't know what she was, but she was no ordinary creature. She was a spirit. And somehow, she had been waiting for me. Nyari, the spirit panther. She didn't growl. She hummed like thunder beneath the earth. She was neither beast nor ghost. Her paws left no tracks, yet every shadow bowed when she passed. She didn't live in the dark zone. She was the dark zone. The silence, the fear, the forgotten stories, all of it, wrapped in fur and fangs. She looked into me and saw the storm I didn't yet understand. And then, without a word, she turned and walked away. But I knew I had to follow. She didn't speak like Muntu. No words, no sound. Her voice wasn't something I heard. It was something I felt. It bloomed inside my chest, echoed through my bones. It was like the trees were whispering, but only I could understand. A pulse, a presence, a truth older than language. She spoke through me, and with every thought she sent, my spirit stirred. Not like a student before a teacher, but like a flame meeting wind. I didn't know what I was becoming, but she did. You are not just boy or beast, she said. Not vine or fire, not claw or skin. You are the space between, the stillness before the storm, the breath between the growl. The jungle chose you not because you're one of them, but because you are both. You are the balance, Zaru. Where others divide, you unite. Remember that when the world tries to pull you apart. She taught me the last truths. That the wild spirit wasn't given for war or wrath, but for wisdom. It chose me not to burn the jungle or conquer kingdoms, but to bridge them. To walk between beast and man and remind both who they are. She said, you were never cursed, Zaru. You were called. Called to be the root between two trees. The voice that echoes in both worlds. I learned to see without eyes, to sense movement in stillness, to read the rustle of leaves like pages in a book. I could feel time passing in the trees. Their silence told me more than words ever could. I no longer needed to speak, not when the wind carried my thoughts, and the earth answered back. I was becoming something else. Not just wild, not just human, something in between, something ancient. I stayed there for 7 years, training in silence where time had no name, transforming in ways no mirror could show. The jungle shaped my bones. The spirits carved lessons into my breath. I was no longer just surviving. I was becoming. Every scar, every whisper, every shadow was part of me now. Zaru was no longer the child left by a stream. I was something the world had never seen, and soon it would remember my name. And when I returned, I was no longer a boy hiding behind vines, no longer afraid of my shadow or theirs. My steps were rooted in purpose. My eyes held storms. The jungle didn't follow me, it walked with me. Every leaf bent, every wind shifted. They saw me and paused. The boy they once called cursed now moved like a king. And I had not come for revenge. I had come to rise. I stood taller than the tallest warrior, with skin like carved wood, and eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. My breath was calm, but my presence roared. They didn't see the boy they cast away. They saw something else, something older than their fear. I wasn't just strong, I was unshaken. Every scar was a story, every step a thunder. I had become what the jungle shaped me to be. Not a beast, not a man, but the storm between them. Some bowed, some ran, but none could deny. The jungle had made me king of something. Not with crowns or thrones, but with silence that commanded storms. With eyes that saw truth beneath bark and bone. They didn't have to say it. I could feel it in the roots, in the way the wind paused, in the way even fire waited for my breath. I was not a prince, not a legend, but something else entirely. Born of soil, crowned by wildness. One day, while walking the edge of the old kingdom's border, I heard something I hadn't heard in years. Screams. Not animal cries, but human. Voices filled with terror. The clash of metal. The thunder of hooves. Smoke rising through the canopy like a warning. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The jungle held its breath. And I ran toward the sound, not because I knew what waited, but because whatever it was, it didn't belong here. Humans. Warriors in armor, cold-eyed and ruthless. Marching through the trees like they owned them. Blades drawn, torches raised. They had come for the jungle. To take, to burn, to bend it to their will. But they found her instead. Amma, a princess, fierce and unbroken. Chained like a trophy, yet standing tall. The jungle had not chosen her, but it had not abandoned her either. Not while I still breathed. Princess Amma, golden eyes that saw both war and wonder. Skin like moonlight wrapped in honey glowing even in shadow. Her curly hair, tied in royal knots, crowned her like the queen she was destined to become. But it wasn't her beauty that made armies kneel. It was her fire. A heart that beat louder than war drums. A gaze that silenced kings. And when she rode into battle, gold did not shine brighter than her spirit. She fought like a lioness fierce, untamed, fearless. Her spear danced through the air. Her roar shook the walls of the castle. But they came like a wave, endless, merciless. 10 against 1, steel met gold. And though her spirit burned like fire, her body gave in. She fell to her knees, blood on her lips, defiance still in her eyes. They chained her, not because she was weak, but because even fallen, she was still a threat to their throne. I followed them through the canopy, high above the ground, where only shadows lived, silent, invisible. My breath matched the wind, my heartbeat the rustle of leaves. Below me they marched with her in chains, laughing, mocking. They thought the jungle was asleep, but I was awake, watching, waiting. And when the moon touched my mark, it was time. I dropped like a whisper and struck like thunder. Vines became my whips alive, ruthless, snapping through the air like serpents with purpose. Fire curled around my hands, not wild, but loyal. It danced with me, kissed my enemies, scorched the fear into their bones. I didn't kill, but mercy was not gentle. They screamed, they ran, and when they begged to live, the jungle listened and let them crawl. Amma stared at me breathless, eyes wide, trembling like the leaves around us. The battle still echoed in the distance, but in that moment, time held its breath. Her voice cracked like soft thunder. You're not real. I smiled, not with pride, but with truth. The fire still curled at my fingertips. The vines still pulsed around my feet. And I said, neither is this jungle. Because we were standing inside something ancient, something born of blood, spirit, and memory. She called me the Wild Prince. The words felt strange, like a crown I never asked for. Not born from bloodlines or thrones, but from dirt, roots, and rain. A name spoken not with fear, but with something softer. Curiosity, wonder, maybe even hope. I didn't understand it. Not then, but I didn't hate it either. Because for the first time, I saw myself through her eyes, not just as the jungle's child, but as something more. As she healed, she stayed. Not because she had to, but because something in the wild had begun to feel like home. And in the jungle, time slowed. Days melted into nights. We laughed. We learned. We lived. No crowns, no war. Just two hearts finding rhythm in the rustling leaves. In the silence between storms. In the way her smile made the vines bloom again. She told me about palaces, marble halls, gilded ceilings, and the weight of poisoned thrones. She spoke of politics like war, words used as weapons, of masks worn behind jewels. And I listened. Then I showed her my kingdom, how to talk to birds with stillness, how to dance with trees when the wind is just right. No crowns, no guards, just sky, leaves, and the kind of truth that doesn't need to be spoken. We fell in love without saying it. There were no grand confessions, no stolen kisses under moonlight, just glances, pauses, moments that lingered longer than they should have. Because love doesn't need words, not when two souls recognize each other. Ours did, in every shared silence, in the way she leaned into my laughter, in the way I memorized her breathing, like a prayer. But then, the call came, her kingdom under siege, her father dying. The winds changed, the birds went silent, and the warmth between us turned cold. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice shaking, tears slipping down sun-kissed cheeks. Everything we had built, hanging by a thread. And then she asked, not as a princess, not as a warrior, but as someone who had given me her heart, will you help me? I didn't answer Amma with words. There was nothing to say, because love doesn't ask, it remembers. And loyalty, it doesn't speak, it moves. So I stood, not as a prince, not as a beast, but as something the world had forgotten, a promise made in silence. And when I rose, the jungle rose with me. The vines, the wind, the fire, they knew. And so did she. We journeyed together, her on horseback, riding with purpose. Me in the trees, silent and watching. Two paths moving as one. The jungle behind us whispered like a dream fading. And ahead, the world beyond the vines. Loud, cold, made of stone and smoke. I smelled steel in the wind. Heard wheels grind where rivers used to run. Every step forward felt like a piece of the wild left behind. But I stayed close. Not for me, for her. When I reached the kingdom gates, the world stopped. People gasped, not in fear, but in something older. Children clutched their mother's skirts. eyes wide, hearts pounding. Old men fell to their knees, whispering names they hadn't spoken in decades. Legends they thought were myths stood breathing in front of them. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I only stood, vines still wrapped around my arms, the golden mark on my chest glowing like dawn. And in their silence, I heard their history remembering me. The cursed child has returned, they whispered. Their voices trembled, not with guilt, but with fear. They looked at me and saw the past they tried to bury. But I was not a child anymore. Not the boy they cast out beneath the moon. Not the whisper in the trees. I had returned as the storm, the one they created, the one they left behind. And now, I carried thunder in my breath, and justice in every step. Amma led me through halls of marble and memory. Each step echoed like a secret too loud to be ignored. The walls shimmered, carved with glory, soaked in silence. But beneath the beauty, something darker breathed. The air smelled of gold and fear, heavy, perfumed, like power trying to hide its sins. Portraits stared at me like ghosts. Every crack in the stone whispered what they'd done. She walked with grace. I walked with thunder in my bones. And the palace remembered both of us. On a bed of silk, her father lay. The old king, once a lion in armor, now just a man drowning in silence. His breath rattled like broken glass. And then he coughed. Blood painted his lips like a curse he could no longer swallow. Amma rushed to his side, but his eyes, they found me, wide, disbelieving, as if the past had returned wearing flesh and vengeance. And in that moment, the crown didn't feel heavy. It felt afraid. "He's one of them," the generals shouted, their voices sharp, hands already on their blades. Fear made them loud. Pride made them blind. But before the room could turn into a battlefield, Amma stepped forward. No crown, no armor. Just fire in her eyes. And with one look, they froze. No sword could match her silence. And then she spoke. "This is the one who saved me." The air shifted, and the throne room remembered what honor was supposed to feel like. The king stared at me, eyes clouded, but sharp enough to cut through time. His breath trembled, but his voice, though thin, carried the weight of memory. "I remember that mark," he rasped. His gaze dropped to my chest, the glowing circle pulsing like a heartbeat made of gold. And then he smiled, not with joy, but with something older. "Destiny," he whispered, "plays well with irony." And in that moment, the room bowed to something greater than any crown. War drums echoed across the kingdom, not in rhythm, but in mourning. The sky turned dark with smoke. The wind carried dust, fear, and the scent of fire. Invaders stood at the gates, rows of spears rising like forests of iron. Banners snapped in the wind like they'd come to claim the very sky. Cannons lined the hills, mouths open like beasts ready to roar. The kingdom that once whispered peace now screamed of war, and every heartbeat marched to the sound of drums. The army looked to the old king, their eyes full of questions, full of fear. He lay weak, breath shallow, crown tilted like time had taken its toll. But he didn't look back at them. He looked at me, and in that gaze, he passed something no sword could carry. No words, no speech, just a silence heavy with trust. And in that silence, I stood, and the soldiers did. I stepped forward, not as prince groomed by marble halls and royal names, not as beast raised by vines, fire, and thunder, but as both, born of two worlds, shaped by exile, forged by survival. My chest burned with the mark of the jungle. My spine carried the weight of crowns I never wanted. And in that moment, standing between stone and soil, I didn't bow. I didn't roar. I simply stood, and the earth stood with me. Gorillas marched behind me, silent, massive, loyal. Their footsteps thundered like ancient drums across stone paths. Above us, birds soared in perfect rhythm, a sky full of wings and freedom. I didn't speak. I didn't have to, because the forest had followed me home. The vines, the wind, the wild, they came not as invaders, but as witnesses, to show this kingdom what it forgot, that the jungle never forgets its own. Amma rode beside me, draped in golden armor that caught the light like a rising sun. Not a princess in silk, but a warrior carved from flame and will. Her eyes were fierce sharp as her blade, unblinking as war approached. And her heart, it beat louder than the war drums, louder than the banners that cracked in the wind, louder than fear itself. She didn't flinch. She didn't falter. She rode like the battle had been waiting for her, and she was ready to answer. We clashed with the enemy in the valley. Steel clashed against root. Orders turned to war cries. The earth shook, metal met vine, and for every blade they raised, the jungle raised 10 more. Flame met wind wild and unchained. Their fire roared. Our skies howled. The valley became a storm not of weather, but of wills. And in the center of it all, we fought not for a crown, but for the soul of a kingdom. But even in battle, betrayal found me. Not from a stranger, not from the shadows, but from Baku, the one who once hunted me through the trees, the one whose blade nearly ended my breath beneath the moon. I saw him, standing not with us, but with them. His armor bore their crest. His eyes held no shame, only fire and something colder. He chose them, and in that moment, the battle became personal. He struck down my brothers, one by one, before they could roar, before they could run. He moved like a shadow, but killed like flame. And when our trees, our sacred trees, burned, he didn't turn away. He watched. He smiled, like it meant nothing, like we meant nothing. The fire danced in his eyes. And in that moment, I stopped grieving and started remembering his face. I called him out. No more hiding in smoke. No more striking from shadows. No more running. This time he would face me. Not the boy he chased through the trees. Not the frightened breath behind the vines. But the storm he created. The fire he lit. I gave him a chance. Not to surrender, but to see what justice looks like when it has claws. No more hiding. No more mercy. Fought beneath lightning and rain. The sky tore open above us. Thunder crashing like drums of the old gods. Fist met claw. Flame met fang. The storm didn't watch us. It joined us. Rain soaked our wounds, but the fire inside burned hotter. Every strike echoed across the valley. Not just a fight, a reckoning. Two forces that were never meant to share the same earth, colliding, until only one would remain standing. He roared in rage. You will never be jungle. His voice echoed like thunder made of hate. He wanted to break me with his roar, but I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, calm as the sky before the storm, and I whispered not to him, but to the earth, to the fire, to the wind that raised me. I am not jungle. Pause. I am everything. And in that moment, even the storm listened. And then, with one breath of wind, the jungle hushed. Even the thunder paused. One final flame curled from my hand, not as rage, but as truth. It didn't roar. It whispered. And Baku, the warrior who hunted me, who betrayed us, who burned our trees, finally stumbled. His blade dropped. His eyes softened. And he fell, not to fire, but to justice. The army shattered like glass beneath thunder. Shields dropped. Blades clattered, and the will to fight vanished. The invaders ran, through mud, through flame, through the weight of their own fear. Not from us, but from what we had become. From the force that stood united. The jungle, the kingdom, the storm. And then, as quickly as it began, it was over. The valley fell silent. The wind softened, and peace returned. Not as a gift, but as something earned. The old king lay dying, his breath thin as smoke. His crown rested beside him, no longer worn, just waiting. The room was silent, except for the quiet rasp of a life letting go. His eyes, once fierce, now full of peace, looked at me. He reached for my hand, fingers trembling like old leaves in wind. And he said, "My daughter chose well. No judgment, no regret, only pride." And in that final breath, he passed more than a crown. He passed forgiveness. Then he closed his eyes, not in pain, not in fear, but in peace, as if he had been waiting for this moment, to see his daughter safe, to see the kingdom rise again, to see me, not as a threat, but as a son. No trumpet sounded, no thunder cracked, just silence. And in that silence, a king became more than a man. He became a memory. He became a story. He became legend. Emma wore the crown of gold, shaped by centuries of kings, polished by power, shining beneath the throne room light. But beside her, I wore the crown of fire and leaves. No jewels, no metal. Only what the jungle gave me, the flames of survival, the roots of truth, woven into something no kingdom could forge. Together we didn't rule from tradition, we ruled from balance. Gold and green, steel and storm, royalty reborn. The kingdoms sang our names. Their voices rose from the marble streets to the palace towers. A song of hope, of healing, of home. Drums echoed through the courtyards. Children danced in gold dust. And the sky lit up like it remembered joy. But it wasn't just the kingdom that rejoiced. The jungle roared in celebration. Branches swayed, birds soared, gorillas pounded the earth with pride. Two worlds, once divided, now beat with one heart. And in that rhythm, we became legend. We married beneath a moon that smiled, full in silver, watching from above like an old friend. There were no priests, no papers, just promises. Vines wrapped gently around our fingers, as if the earth itself wanted to bless us. The river flowed beside us, but that night it danced. Its waters swirled and sparkled with every vow we spoke. Fireflies lit the air like stars come close, and the wind whispered our names. In the silence between words, we became one. Muntu watched from the edge of the crowd. No crown, no words. Just the steady rise and fall of his breath beneath the silver of his fur. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Because in his stillness was joy. The kind of joy that doesn't clap or cheer, but breathes deeply and knows he was part of this. That the cub he once protected had become a king. And as vines wrapped around our hands, his silence said everything. The villagers who abandoned me, the ones who turned their backs, who called me cursed, who watched as I disappeared into the wild, now bowed before me, their heads low, their eyes wide with something between fear and awe. But they did not recognize the boy they threw away, because I had changed. I had become everything they feared and everything they needed. I stood not for revenge, but as proof that exile can become legend, because I was no longer just man, no longer just beast. The scars on my skin told one story. The fire in my eyes told another. I had walked in two worlds and been rejected by both. But I did not bend. I became the space between them, the breath between roar and whisper, the silence between moonlight and flame. I was no longer one or the other. I was both. I was balance. And balance does not beg to be seen. It simply stands. And so, I became what no one thought possible. Not a shadow lurking in the vines, not a curse whispered by frightened mouths, but something greater. I became king of two worlds, of jungle and of kingdom, of spirit and of flesh, of curse and crown. I did not belong to one or the other. I stood at the center, the bridge, the storm. And from that place, I rose. I rose.